Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Magical Friends and How to Summon Them, a game that will either shortly be or is already on Kickstarter, link in the description down below. Now, Magical Friends and How to Summon Them is effectively what you get when you take Small World and you make it into a racing game. That's really what this game feels like. Throw in a dash of initiative systems from El Grande, and that's the game system you have at play. You see, the goal of the game in Magical Friends and How to Summon Them, which I probably should just call Magical Friends for the ease of a simpler, quicker review, the goal of Magical Friends is going to be across 8 rounds to get as many friends as possible into the mystical tavern. You're trying to gather these various creatures and then move them from their central little hub over here all the way into the tavern in the corner, going through one of 4, knocking my characters over, going through one of 4 pathways, either to the left, the right, or down either of the center pathways to get your friends into the tavern. Now, what you're going to be doing every single round is you're going to start every single round by bidding for your initiative, bidding for who's going to have the first selection of the various friends in the game. So perhaps I go ahead and I say, you know what, I'm going to bid a 6 over here. And it's a public bid. I'm going first. I'm going to play that card. I get 1 extra bonus footprint, which can be relevant for movement. So 1 bonus movement, and I'm playing a 6. Now, the other players can choose anything except for a 6 from what they have left. And these cards are one-time use. Use them and then you lose them. So your high numbers will lock in choices. Your low numbers will give you abilities that will be helpful, but you don't get the choice you want. And in either case, they're both gone for the next time. So we're going to go ahead and I guess I really would rather go first. For the low price of a 7, I'll pay 7, me being both these characters. I get 1 magic, which could be useful, we'll see, but I'm going to have first pick of the various creatures over here. From there, you move to the actual inboard over here, where you're going to gather, you're going to look at the various creatures at play, and you're going to choose which creature you want. Now, the creature you choose is going to be a few different things. They're going to give you an ability that's true as long as they're in play, meaning as long as they're in the map, as long as they're making their way to the tavern, but have not yet arrived, you will benefit from all the abilities of your creature. And by arrived, I mean arrived or died. Alternatively, they're both possibilities. Additionally, the creature is going to give you a bunch of characteristics of the creature itself, which will be relevant to itself and other creatures. And then lastly, the creature is going to give you, your friends are going to give you the amount of movement they give. So for example, if I take the mermaid friend over here, the mermaid friend, I'm going to get 3 times 2 movement. What does that mean? Let's go ahead and say that I do take the mermaid friend. We're going to take that mermaid friend. We're going to go ahead and find that number 24. This is a prototype. Everything you see here, by the way, from production, from art, from rules and everything, this is very much a prototype subject to change. We're going to grab that mermaid and we're going to go ahead and slide one of our little markers on it to show that, well, we won it. We're then going to go ahead and put it over here into our little central tower, and we're going to start moving. Now I have 3 movement times 2, remember that? And I'm going to go ahead and look, and if I go ahead and have magic 2, then once per turn I can move a creature 2 spaces backwards. Let's go ahead and show you that on the top camera. If I have magic 2, then I can go ahead, that's going to give me magic, and if I have magic 2 across all my abilities and creatures and everything, then I can move 1 creature 2 spaces backwards. The other aspects over here is going to be the 3 movement times 2, and then some creature characteristics. In this case, we have a medium good creature over there. So let's go ahead and move our creatures, well, 3 creatures, 2 movement each. We're going to start off with the mermaid over here going 1, 2 into this zone. We're going to grab another creature, and this one I think we're going to go ahead and head up over here. We're going to go 1, 2 with my arachne over here. And then lastly, we're going to go ahead with this creature and go 1, 2 over there. So we're slowly moving around the board. The intricacies are not yet present in terms of seeing what's going on. Now the plus side is I did play this card that gave me an extra magic symbol when I bid for it, which means when I combine that with my magic from the mermaid friend themselves, I now have 2 magic, which means I can move a creature backwards. Let's go ahead and move this creature over here back 1, 2. So you're playing around with the abilities of your creatures and then trying to interact with the board in a way that results in your creatures moving as far forward as possible while moving other creatures backwards. On its own, this isn't really very impressive, at least not yet. Where the game starts to get more intricate is going to be through the board as well as the combinations of creatures you have in the game. You see, the board itself is going to have 4 different pathways, and the pathways have different triggers over here. I've set up just a few options. They are double-sided, so there's a bunch of ways you can actually play out this game. But for instance, this pathway over here, if this creature moves here, they're going to go ahead and introduce their catapult to the game. Catapults can be a lot of fun because they can both fling your own creatures further. If you move onto a catapult, you can go ahead and ricochet 2 spaces forward. They're friendly catapults. But additionally, if you re-trigger a catapult, you can also use them to attack other creatures. A catapult over here can fire 2 forward and kill the arachne. So that's going to be just one example of a terrain effect. You're going to have this pathway through the mountains here, which results when you try to move forward through this pathway, you're going to go ahead and roll a die and then do whatever that die says. A 5 to 6 means I'm going the slower pathway. A 3 to 4 would have been the fast pathway, and a 1 to 2 would have been slower with poison, which is one of the many ways your creatures can die. So you want to be mindful as you go through the mountains. Over here we have Hell. Hell's going to be an evil place where evil creatures can slay other creatures by moving onto them. So Hell can present a bit of a shorter pathway, but also a way for you to stomp on other creatures and hurt them. So there's a bit of a risk-reward as far as what type of creatures are motivated to move through Hell. And if you're worried about it, you can move over there to switch Heaven to Hell. While players are going through it, you can flip it over, and now good creatures can't be slain or poisoned while in Heaven, which is exactly the Heaven I grew up with. And then lastly, you'll have the Fairy Dust pathway, where you can go ahead moving through it, gathering Fairy Dust as you land in various spaces. Fairy Dust, which will empower your creatures to move further faster, but also doing so while poisoning them at the same time. A bit of a boost, so to speak, but one that comes at the cost of you actually, well, living or dying. But all that, again, is still just a hint of the puzzle of Magical Friends. Where I said this game is small world with a racing game, it's because of the combinations of the various creatures you can have. A stack of all these creatures that you can add to your game, each of them coming with their own different ability of how they interact. And those creatures, bidding for those creatures, grabbing those creatures at the right time is where this game lies. Because you're going to be going ahead and grabbing a creature. That creature is going to define the movement of the other creatures across the board. That creature is going to go ahead and define the abilities of your creatures. The way you can stomp on somebody else, and maybe you can hurt flying creatures. Maybe you can move other creatures back a space. Maybe you can present an obstacle to other players. Maybe you can jump on your own creatures and ricochet forward. You can have combinations of abilities that are all at play, helping you until you get to the end. At which point that creature's ability is no longer in play. This is where that small world comparison comes in. You have combining creatures with the board state in a bit of a racing game, although once you've actually done what you need to do, those creatures and abilities slowly expire out of play, either because they were killed and hurt and poisoned by other players, or because you've gotten to where you need to be, and now it's time to party at the bar while the other creatures behind you keep going. Rinse and repeat across 8 rounds as you attempt to gather as many creatures into the end. The last few rounds have a bit of a catch-up to try to ensure that you're still in the game, meaning they have little ways you can jump forward so that somebody who starts the last round still has a possibility of ending because of the various boosts and boons you've gotten throughout the game, and that is effectively magical creatures and how to summon them. Once again, across 8 rounds, bid for a creature, gather the creature, add it to your tableau, and then start sending out your creatures and combining all their abilities in ways that help you win this game. This is a game that plays at 2 to 4 players. It plays 2 to 4 players. It's going to take roughly an hour. The box says 1 to 2 hours. The games I've played of this have rarely gone over 70-ish minutes or so. It's a fairly quick moving game. And even then, like I said, it's at 8 rounds. Like, you could shorten it in theory. I know the design is looking at potentially shortening it, but I haven't felt the need to it based on the game length. And this is the part where we'll get into the what I liked, didn't like, and can see others not liking. And to begin with, there's going to be that playtime I talked about already. This game is a fairly quick game to teach, fairly quick to pick up. You start bidding on creatures, you look at the abilities, you don't have to learn every single one of these creatures off the bat. Grab a few creatures, look at them, figure out which ways will combine. Those first few turns will feel a bit inefficient because you might be bidding on creatures that give 3 creatures movement 2. And yet you may only have the 1 creature. So it's a bit of a guessing game early on as far as what's going to be right for you right now, but involve a degree of sacrifice as the most efficient thing. But past that, it's simple to teach, simple to play, get up and running, doesn't outstay its welcome, and is good for both families and gamers alike. This is a game that is great to play with your family, to play with your kids. It's easy to pick up. It's going to fall in that small world weight class as well. One where you can play it with younger people or gateway gamers, and they'll find it engaging, but still presents enough of a puzzle for full-on gamers to dive into it and still be competing head to head, still being a little bit cutthroat as far as how they position, as far as the combos they see, because there's a lot of combos. This is a game where if you play it 3-4 times, you'll see various combinations of things that you can do that someone who's diving into it for the first time absolutely won't. You'll see ways you can assign distributions of, well, if you move that person backwards 1, and then you move this person forward 2, you'll land in the catapult, ricochet forward, and then be able to trigger that person's abilities. There's like 5 or 6 different things going on at any single point that gives you that puzzle of how you want to proceed forward. And there's tons of variable abilities and combinations. You think through the fact that there's 40 different creatures here, plus of course the board and the way that shapes up, plus of course the choices of your combinations of abilities and your opponent's combinations of abilities, the way that all plays out and what you have to look for in this game gives you a ton of variability as far as the puzzle being presented, as far as the best way to combine things, as well as what looking out for your opponents are trying to combine, because bidding for initiative is not just a question of what you want, it's about denying your opponents what they want as well. I may well want the gargoyle friend over there, but if you get the unicorn friend, you may be able to do horrible things to me, and I need to make sure that doesn't happen more than anything else. So there's a lot to look for here. The possibility of jumping in and just having fun, as well as the possibility of being intricate and strategic in what you do. And that initiative is key. This is going to be the initiative system from El Grande, but it results in you always feeling like you have the control to a certain extent. You're going to make decisions and choices about how much you bid, and often regret your choices, but you'll do so knowing full well that it's your fault and not the game's fault that you did or didn't get what you want. As far as things I didn't like about the game, to begin with, I'm not hugely pulled in by the art style of the game. Now, this very much is a prototype, and the components are subject to change, but I think for the most part, the art is sort of final. What I mean by that, to be very clear, anything you see here that's in black and white is still being edited and updated, so anything black and white is still being adjusted. I'm sure things are being tweaked, but the general art form of the game, I believe, is what we're going for here, and it's charming in its own way, but it's not something that initially pulls me in. This is a game I actually overlooked at first because I looked at the art and I was like, it's not to my taste, but it's a game that is charming, and it's a game that has pulled me in past that once I got over the art. More importantly, past the art, is going to be two other complaints, which are going to be, first of all, some paths in the game feel more fun or better than others. The game gives you multiple pathways, as well as different combinations, because you can, take this off the board, you can play with the map on the board, you can play with this over here, each pathway giving you potentially 2 or 3 different choices as far as how you interact with them. And again, prototype, I don't know what else is being included for the final game, but some paths do feel more fun than others. At lower player counts, you'll block off a path, forcing players to be a little bit more confrontational. But I have found that across multiple plays, people tend to, for example, the Heaven Hell is a good example of one where for the most part, it's rarely really something that people go into. The combination of how far it is and what goes on there is just less fun than other pathways, and so gets chosen less. So that's going to be something that slightly impacts the board and the way you actually interact with it. And then as well as that, I will say some turns do end up being disappointing. For every turn that you have in which you combine this ability with that, and you move that, and then you walk into the cannibal space, and you use a little bit of fairy dust, and you walk 3 characters into the inn, you'll have turns like that for sure, and those are amazingly fun. You'll also have turns when none of the characters on the board really present a combination of abilities that works for you, and you look at one and I guess I'll just move 3 characters too, and there's no fun combos that you see or that work out, and so some turns in this game, across the 8-turn game, you'll have a few turns, potentially, that feel like, it was okay, it was fine, I didn't do what I wanted to do, but I'm moving closer towards the end. As far as what I can see others not liking in the game, it's going to be a few small things, and to begin with, it's going to be the tracking mechanism of the game. You see, the game has a system, the game's going to be using standees, and it has a system for tracking the good, the evil, the creature size, as well as potentially if that creature is going to be damaging and dangerous as it moves around the board. It has all these systems at play that might be a little bit overwhelming or non-intuitive at first. But once you have a game or two under your belt, you do tend to take a quick kind of glimpse at what the creatures are doing and see whether they're evil, what size they are, and whether they're dangerous. But then between that and looking at the abilities that they actually have, there could be a lot of information to track in terms of what others are doing, which can be a bit overwhelming. I mentioned earlier that sometimes bidding for what your opponent shouldn't get is very important. And if you don't really know what your opponent has, and if you're not yet familiar with the game and you're still trying to figure all that stuff out, there's a lot of information and perhaps too much to be taken in. Past that, there's going to be luck of the draw in the game, from things like just rolling the dice to see what happens when those things occur, to even just such things as, which creatures come out and cycle down. I may have bid low on the initiative, giving myself 3 extra movement because I didn't love anything in the inn, but then by the time I choose, another creature has filtered slowly in, and it might be the perfect thing I want. There's going to be some degree of luck of the draw, and also, more importantly, a little bit of take that in this game. This is a game where inherently you are trying to stomp in your opponent's creatures. You win by having the most friends in the inn, which means either you have the most friends or your opponents have as few friends as possible. And so there's a decent amount of stomping in this game, and if that's not your cup of tea, this is not going to be a game for you. And then lastly, once someone is ahead, it can be hard to catch up in this game. If you look over here and you see, oh yeah, one person over there has 4 friends in the inn and I have 1, and you're in round 5, it's pretty much a game that you're not going to be winning. It might still be fun. It is still fun. I've played the game. It's still fun even when you know you're not winning, but it can certainly be a little bit frustrating for those who are not interested in playing a game where you know you're not winning. Depending on how well the game is going, depending on whether someone has gotten a little bit of advantage or combinations, you could be in round 5 looking at somebody else who's almost certainly winning the game. As far as final thoughts on this one I'm very mixed on. My rating system is going to be down below in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It's a 5-point scale. And this one's hovering somewhere between a 3 and a 4 for me. I really like Magical Friends. But I feel I really need to dive into more of this is a prototype review, which means it always has those quirks, and some of those quirks come in the form of accessibility. There's also a lack of art, and some of these spaces are, like I said already, are a little bit less fun. And this is one where I've gone back several times on whether it's a 3 or a 4 for me. Right now, I am going to leave it as a 3 out of 5. A good game, one that I'm enjoying, but one that it hasn't yet crossed into that 4, that zone where I desperately want it. I like this game. I recommend this game. But like Small World before it, I also don't know if it'll stay in my collection forever. Small World is a game that I really enjoyed. and then I played it again and again and again, and eventually I got tired of the exploration of the game, the combinations of abilities, the things that kept me going. Magical Friends and How to Summon Them has a charm to it, as a fun and appeal to it, and I like racing games. A few things cleaned up in this game, a few pathways that are explored, a few iconography, making the game a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to dive into, could easily push this one into a 4 out of 5 for me. Overall, this is Magical Friends and How to Summon Them, a game that I've been enjoying. Great for family, friends, whoever, well, family, friends, I'm saying friends, whatever it is. But either way, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can check this out on Kickstarter. There'll be a link down below. And as always, have a good one.